that they'd like to call in. And the phone number, if anyone is listening and would like to call in later, the phone number is 888-382-9556. Again, it's 888-382-9556. If you want to call in, we will be taking comments again at the end of the meeting. Thank you. All right, let's get into business. Natural Features Protection Review Board. Do we have anything?
That would be me. I did not have an opportunity to review the May meetings, but I do have on the April meeting. They spent a lot of time on the Reed Court floodplain stormwater improvement project. They are requesting a variance on that. It's going to help reduce the flooding from the Portage Creek discharge. There's going to be a mechanical capturing device. It's going to be similar to, I think they call it a tornado, where it collects a lot of the sediments, mainly the phosphorus, as it comes off the first wash from the street, which is predominantly most of the pollutants. And they are going to be putting in a boardwalk on that to kind of turn it into more of a public green space. So that was a positive thing in my mind.
Yeah, I saw the first announcements about that. I was wondering if we can get like some schematics so we can get some information about what that project is, because it looks like it might be substantial.
I can look into that and get that, sure.
I appreciate that, thank you. Because when they announced that they were looking for that variance, there just really wasn't any information about what the project was going to be.
I can do that.
Thank you. Rita is not here for air and water quality report. I can say that we have had several high pollution days from GPI pollution, and when reporting it to the city, one of the things I noticed about the city form, which I thought was really interesting, I hadn't noticed that before, is that when you submit an odor report, the city provides your information to the appropriate city and state regulators, but also sends your information to graphic packaging. And I think that seems problematic in two ways. One, it means that the city knows exactly what the pollution problem is because that's the only person or only corporation that's being sent to. And secondly, I think it's somewhat odd that when you report a polluter, your personal information is given to the polluter. I think that's a problematic issue. Moving on. Wildlife and natural resources.
I'm just coming back from maternity leave, really, so we haven't had the chance to do much. We're setting up a meeting for this upcoming week, though, for us to discuss.
Do you want to talk about the email we got?
Oh, regarding
the deer issue,
yeah, I reviewed that. I've gone over, I've spent a lot of time looking at a lot of the information that was in there. Yeah. It raises a lot of concerns. Some of it's kind of dated. Some of it's referring to materials in Europe and other materials that are a little bit more specific to deer that may be found in this area. Long and short of it is, that's one of the things that I want to discuss at a meeting, is the fact that I think that we need some local biological or ecological authorities that can kind of give us more of a focus on Kalamazoo proper. But it's a lot of information that's in there. It's nothing that this board hasn't seen before, or this committee hasn't seen before.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things I was thinking of when I looked at it is there might be a need for some kind of experts who could talk more or provide more education. The deer tick issue, it's confusingly named because yes, deer ticks they're on deer, but they are also on mice and shrews and dogs and cats, and the biggest issue we have with ticks and the spread of them here is birds. because we're a flyway migratory pathway, so we get a lot of spread that way. So I think some education there, and then also kind of ties into the vegetation issue. We can use this as a entryway to work on getting rid of some of the invasives, because barberry, honeysuckle, and then several of the ground covers like vinca and English ivy are not host plants, but they're habitat for ticks. So it might be a chance to kind of use that as a way to encourage native plants.
Yeah, I looked into the tick thing. In fact, I think there's an article in MLive today about 135 or 185% increase in Lyme disease reports. Because I had that question also, how else does it spread? And again, this is why I want to get some experts that can directly address this, because I don't have anybody on the record. But anecdotally, it was the reason the deer create the concern is they're large, they carry a lot of them, and they move into areas where they move. And the deers, yes, or the birds fly also, but they're so much smaller, and they're way more isolated as far as footpaths and other areas. And it's not like they're only found on deer, and it is kind of a bad rap that the deer get on that, but they are a major vector. But again, that's one of the things that we've got to start getting some information on the record as to what the actual concerns are versus maybe some of this misnaming or just general information on the ticks and also the invasive species. That was another question that came up. I called and talked to the Ann Arbor people, is that the deer don't seem to be eating the invasives. They're eating the natural stuff, and so there's a weighted impact on native species versus a lot of the invasives, which, as you pointed out, are where there's a lot of ticks. So.
And I think also what the tick issue is, it's really starting to be, there's a lot of climate change that's going on, and with the hard winters and the cold, which has been usually one of the natural remediation efforts that nature does in regards to the tick population, and the warmer that things become and the less severe winters we have, the more ticks you're going to have. And so I think as we move forward as a committee, just kind of look at all of these things, and as I like to say, start connecting the dots on some of these problems, because they are mostly all related.
Yeah, good point. And the ticks, the primary issue is Lyme disease. And the biggest vector of that, or reservoir for that, is mice. So it's not actually the deer, but it is a good opportunity to look for ways to bring more education to the table. So I think that's a good opportunity to pursue. Rita, doing all right?
Yeah, I'm a little sick right now.
Oh. You up to giving your air report, quality report? We can jump back to you if you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, we'll come back to you, give you a chance to settle in. All right, Planning Commission.
Yeah, so the update from the Planning Commission, they had a couple of properties with special requests for rezoning. One on Roscoe and Millard that went from manufacturing to Live Work 1, and a collection of properties on Burdick and Vine that went from Live Work 1 to the Downtown 3 designation. That basically allowed it to be up to 5 stories, could have 100% impervious surfaces. It's being used for housing, and it doesn't look like they are going to use all of those amendments that the Downtown 3 would allow for, and are looking to include green space and those sorts of amenities as well. It did pass, so that'll be some affordable housing in that area. Otherwise, they elected new officers and voted to continue to delegate site plan reviews to the site plan committee rather than doing it within the Planning Commission itself. And that's the update for both April and May.
Anybody have any questions on that? All right, let's move ahead. Thomas is not here for tree committee report. Asylum Lake Policy and Management Council.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot going on with that. There won't be a July meeting. Probably the biggest thing that was there was they were also talking about the burn permit has been issued. They've got several burns, and they were looking, sorry about that, thanks. There are several burns coming up. They were looking for people to help out with that. And then also they dovetailed that with the wild ones that they hire every year to come in and help eradicate certain species, invasive species. And then they discuss budget. They're well-funded and looking forward to this next year. Also, the salt remediation project, that's kind of on hold. The last testing of that process, which shows so much promise, had to be delayed because they ran out of snow. Their last test was scheduled for the first part of April. They didn't get the snow that they were hoping for, so all of it gets pushed until next year. So that's all kind of static.
On the burns that they're looking for volunteers, do you know when those are or how anyone who's interested can either volunteer or get more information?
That's a good question. I was just looking at my...
Already happened.
Yeah, I think they were this last weekend.
Last weekend.
Yep. Yeah, last weekend. So, but I didn't see whether or not they completed. The burn permits are for a period of time, and they're real picky. The people that do the burns are real picky because the humidity's got to be right, the wind's got to be right, everything has to be right. And so that's why they give you a window of time to use those permits. And everything was set to go this last weekend. I was in Tennessee this last weekend. I don't know, do you know, John, if they actually pulled it off?
They did, and there's also another burn scheduled for this fall because there's some issues with the invasive qualities of the big blue stem. And so it's one of the ways that we can hopefully help mitigate some of the spread of the big blue stem and get more of the forbs to germinate and grow. So they're going to kind of do it as a two-step process.
Yeah, I just read something about old growth prairies, that blue stem and Indian grass are not dominant in old growth prairies because of fire regimes, and you see more of the drop seed and smaller grasses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to do, is just hit it when in the fall.
Okay.
Which is so odd that we've got a native plant that becomes invasive. So, but anyway, they're trying to address it. They're on top of it. It's impressive how well they manage that area out there.
Yeah.
Well, it just goes to show that none of these ecosystems exist in a vacuum. You know, people have been impacting them for thousands of years. All right, let's see. That takes us to Parks and Rec.
Parks and Recs would be me, and unfortunately, I don't have anything to report, and I don't know if I'm missing things. I have not been able to attend the actual meeting itself, so I've been looking online in regards to if there's any type of online activity or YouTube. I have yet to been able to find that. Maybe I'm not looking in the right place. From a personal standpoint, as we talk more about sustainability, budget control, my personal opinion is that I think they're mowing too much. I think that they can lessen the amount of mowing and increase the biodiversity of the parks, create an opportunity for education, for schools to become more involved in that whole program. So I think it's something that I know I'm going to be addressing with the Parks Department now that summer's coming and I have a little bit more time.
Good issue to take up. On parks, Justin, I don't know if you happen to, Gish, if you happen to know either parks or the tree committee, how the city did with the recent storms. I mean, I know in my neighborhood we had trees down everywhere. How it managed with city property?
No, yeah, I'm sure there was damage, but I don't know how much or where. Probably be more public services, pulling trees off streets and things like that. Yeah, no, nothing really there.
Okay, yeah, just curiosity, didn't know if you would have an answer to that. Figured I'd ask. All right, Watershed Council, the last meeting, this one's me, Watershed Council, they are, it was an interesting meeting, both basically just dealing with organizational issues, talking about funding streams, et cetera. But they do have some good projects coming up with the Canoe the Kalamazoo. They also were involved in the very successful cleanup along the river on the 17th. I think the city was involved with that as well. I think the count, they said, was about 150 people showed up. Weather wasn't great, so it was still pretty good with the conditions, especially being a little bit later in the year. It gets harder to do cleanups once the grasses start to grow. All right, Odor Task Force, no meetings. Let's go to Waste Working Group, and then after Native Species, we'll come back to you for your report.
Oh, okay, cool. Actually, Justin Sanders and I report, just so we know. Just a couple of things. This is coming from the meeting that was held last week. We hold one the second Wednesday of every month. The big, again, the compost bins, it's under a pilot program. I would encourage anybody to, apparently it's going fairly well. But again, it's a pilot program through the end of this year, and I would encourage anybody here or any of the citizens, check the website so you know specifically where the locations are. So I hope I get these right, and Justin, if I'm off, let me know. But they're at Vine, Heritage Center, Millwood, and Oakwood.
Not at Oakwood yet. We're meeting with them tomorrow. Vine, Edison, Millwood, and then working with Oakwood.
Perfect, thank you. A couple of other things. So one of the things that I think is kind of cool, and it's going to be brought up, I believe, to the commission, I think it's next week, is we're starting to work with the state on what's called the Next Cycle program. And there is a website for that rather than have me kind of blather through about and describe what it is, I'll give you the address. So it's next, all one word, nextcyclemichigan.com. So I would just encourage you, we're in the early stages of this part at this point in partnering with this program. So I know Justin and Chris are just in the early stages of working with the state and feeling out how we are going to be incorporating and using this. I'm kind of excited about it, and I hope others are as well. That's why I want to, rather than have me talk for 10 minutes and it's not going to make any sense, check out the website, because it's a pretty good website on what's been happening. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity, but the waste treatment services, they were kind of open for tours the last couple of days. I don't know if that was modified given a lot of the damage that, the city faced with the storm that came through, but that was the plan originally. And let's see, one thing that I just noticed, I tend to hound Recycle Coach a lot, and I use that a lot as a reference. But one of the things that I just picked up and noticed right now is that there's not I know it's in a pilot program, but there's not a lot of information about the composting program. They, in the different sites and locations. So my intent is to feed that data back to Chris and see if they want to start updating the app. It is online, but just not on the app. Let's see. And Justin Gish, neither Justin Sanders nor I could attend the events in April. And I know we talked a little bit about the river cleanup. I don't have any information regarding the success, non-success, or anything like that with the foam recycling and the electronics event that occurred. Is there any light that you can shed on that?
No, not specific numbers, more anecdotal, or, I mean, we just continue to get more and more EPS foam at these events. If you drive past there, you know, it's starting to pile up. So that's part of the next cycle, is trying to figure out how we can expand programs. If we can expand programs, what would that look like? So yeah, stay tuned on that. But no, these programs only continue to grow for these quarterly drop-off programs. And one thing I think slipped by me, so I mentioned the neighborhoods where some of these compost bins are in. The entire city, there's a citywide drop-off at 322 Stockbridge where anyone can go. So if you're not in one of those neighborhoods or you're closer to Stockbridge, you can drop off that material. And with composting here, this is commercial composting, so it'll take BPI certified material, you know, your compostable plates and cups and utensils and meats and house plants, and like Steve had said, it's all online there. So I'd encourage everyone to check that out.
Yeah, just there's a composting guide, what's accepted and what's not accepted on the city's website. And also just anecdotally as well, for the EPS foam, I drove by recently in January. I'm pretty sure we filled the trailer to the brim. And then driving by after this one, there's about a trailer's width of bags stacked behind there. So it seems like they filled, I don't know, maybe half a trailer or something just at the April meeting. So yeah, looks like they got a big turnout there.
So that's what we have at this point. Any questions?
I have a question. You said there was one in the Millwood neighborhood, a drop-off? On the website, it lists the one on Stockbridge, Edison, and Vine. Do you know where the Millwood drop-off is?
Yeah, I got you, Steve. Yeah, it's at the community garden.
Oh, okay, at Threads.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just put that one there last week, so it might have made it to the website.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just want to comment that the styrofoam, well, the foam recycling has been wildly successful. Yeah, so it's great that we're doing that. Again, though, kind of going back to like the question about deer, it might be a good opportunity for more education, because the fact that we keep filling up trailer after trailer every month or every time it's offered, if there's some way we can reduce the amount of packaging and foam that needs to go, that would be a huge win.
We can. I'm going to take a wild guess that it's not just like to-go cups, though it's probably orders.
Yeah, it's like, from my experience, tons of styrofoam coolers, and then especially after January, after Christmas, a lot of TV packaging, anything that goes around electronics. So I guess the fact that you're doing that, the stuff the electronics comes in, as well as electronics at the event, you're kind of tackling, two problems at once. But yeah, I guess I just think, as long as people are buying TVs and computers, they're going to be getting EPS foam along with them. So there wasn't a ton in my experience of like to-go containers. And we do also set aside a lot of the egg cartons that come through for local farmers and things like that to put, harvested eggs into. So those get repurposed. And then the one time I was trying to come up with things, but, some of them are a little gross, but a lot of EPS foam, coolers, say for fish or Omaha Steaks coolers and things like that. So I've been trying to brainstorm, somehow that, those could be, some of them are clean, but, obviously if they've been sitting in a garage for a while, people might be a little averse to using those for food and things like that. But so yeah, I'll keep thinking on that and, do some research, see if there's anywhere that those could be repurposed. But for the most part, it seems like a lot of it's coming from electronics and, appliances and things like that, so.
Oh, and one final thing I forgot to mention is that Justin Sanders and I are still working on, we're trying to finalize the mission goals and that specific piece for the committee.
Very good. Any other questions or comments on waste? Then moving to native species, urban landscape, just before you start, Rachel, just, I don't know if, I can't remember if they sent it to everybody or just to me, Damaris has had to resign to move closer to work, so is not here, and we'll have that seat open. So, Rachel. Oh, sorry.
That's me. We do not have an update this month. I am happy to kind of take over for Damaris, though, but we haven't met to discuss anything.
Okay. One update there. So, I had the My Healthy Climate Corps, Destiny working on that. The My Healthy Climate Corps has been stopped due to federal funding cuts. So the state of Michigan no longer has My Healthy Climate Corps. So Destiny's no longer working on that or with us right now. So you could just come back to me, Rachel, if you want to talk about urban landscapes or Buzz in the Zoo, which is still going strong.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, those funding issues are hitting many of the River Watershed Council. That was the impetus for a lot of the discussion about funding at the last meeting, so it's spreading throughout the community. Do you want to give us any update?
Hi, I'm Rita Chandler. I don't believe I have any updates. I'm not sure, am I the only one on the air quality? Okay. Excuse me. I believe you all got the email from Justin about the Eagle taking comments about the air monitoring network plan. I don't know if I can share that email if it's Robinson A1 at michigan.gov for any public comments about their plan. And I also am wondering, and sorry if this is something I should have known, but I'm assuming I'm just doing the research within Kalamazoo, finding out places that are about air quality and things of that nature. Is there somewhere I'm supposed to be? Am I supposed to be getting reports, or I guess that's...
The air, so what the actual title of it is Air and Water Quality Report. In the past, it's just a report on, like you do monitoring with some, then there's the city does a report on water quality, just any information that's available in the past month about air and water quality issues.
Okay, all right. I don't have any updates at the moment, but hopefully I will next month.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on committee work that we missed? Okay, so then we're moving to unfinished business. I don't believe that we have any. The communications, I'm sorry, I just realized that's the place where we normally give city staff a chance to make comments. Justin, do you have anything that we skipped over there?
No, I kind of sprinkle them through as we kind of go through some of this. The city did apply for a solar parking lot at Crosstown, so that ask is out there. We'll know more about that soon. Buzz in the Zoo is going strong. The compost program, recycling only continues to grow. But yeah, I think that about sums it up.
All right, thank you. So that takes us to new business, and what we have on the agenda today is a discussion of some bylaws that have been proposed. So we have a guest with us today. Go ahead.
It's correct. I'm Charles Baer. I'm Assistant City Attorney for the city, from the City Attorney's Office. Part of my duties and responsibilities are to work with CPAD and provide advice and legal assistance. Our office does cover certain boards and committees. We are not, unfortunately, able to cover all of them. This, unfortunately, is one that we do not cover. I routinely cover the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Commission. Been with the city, about 4 years now. Prior to that, I was assistant city attorney for many years with an adjacent city. And I did spend some time as an in-house attorney with the Regional Planning Commission in Escanaba. So I have had some background and experience in municipal law, and it's what I enjoy. I had the occasion, Justin had some questions on the authority of the committee, and I don't remember what the specific question was now. We were able to resolve that, but in the process of that, I did review the bylaws of this committee and raised numerous questions and issues in my mind. Primarily, we have to keep in mind when we're looking at bylaws that any board or committee legally only has the authority given to it by state statute, if there is one authorizing that type of board or committee, or a city ordinance creating it. So the bylaws need to be consistent with that authority and not exceed that authority. This committee, of course, does not have a state statute authorizing it. It is a creature of ordinance. Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning Commission do have state statutes that authorize them. There were provisions, or there are provisions in the current bylaws that would be consistent or appropriate for a business entity such as an LLC or a corporation, allowing for reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses, providing insurance, and various things that really aren't relevant to this committee at all, or not something that you can get into. There were provisions for membership for non-voting members. That's not in the ordinance. The ordinance just provides that there can be 11 voting members. Then there can be accessory individuals appointed as experts by the commission, essentially. And at this time, as far as I'm aware, there are none of those. So we needed to have that consistent. The ordinance provides that this body may determine what its officers should be and appoint such officers as it deems appropriate. That was done in the previous bylaws and needs to be carried over because there aren't any specifics other than a chair who should be. There is no specification really what the duties and responsibilities of those officers are currently. So we have provided some general guidelines in the proposed bylaws as far as what their duties and responsibilities would be. We have also provided, as far as election of officers, how does that occur? And currently, you really don't have any guidelines on that. So consistent with the other bylaws that we have in the city, we have provisions for a nominating committee. We have provision for an annual meeting where the election of officers would occur, so that it's clear how that proceeds. As far as how you conduct your meetings, you really need some rules governing that. What is common within the city and in most municipalities and other organizations is to adopt Robert's Rules of Order. And your bylaws don't do that. So we have provided that those be adopted. Allows for orderly procedure. This is a small body, so do you have to follow every single rule in Robert's to the letter? No, you do not. That can be simplified in smaller boards and committees. As you may be aware, the current, and I didn't bring one along, but the current 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order is about that thick. You don't need all of those. And many of those apply to different types of organizations because that's to be an all-encompassing document. We have provisions on vacancy, how that's dealt with. When your regular meetings are to occur. We do have a provision for special meetings, so that if there would be a need for a special meeting, probably in the regular course of things, there would not be. Public meeting requires a quorum in order to act, so we specified what the quorum would be. An important provision, I think, that should be in the bylaws of any board or commission, as a reminder, is a conflict of interest provision. And that's section 6.5 in the proposed bylaws. Very important provision. We don't want to have in any recommendation you would be making to the commission, anyone making a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. We want to have impartial, informed decisions. So we are defining conflict of interest, and we're requiring you to disclose any conflict of interest that would require you to be disqualified from voting on a particular matter. That should be disclosed at the beginning of the meeting. If you have a question on whether you have a conflict or not, you can certainly contact Justin ahead of the meeting. If he has a question, he'll contact me and we can sort that out. But a conflict of interest includes, but is not limited to, situations where a member or his or her immediate family, his or her partner, or an entity in which the member has family or business ties, directly or indirectly, has an existing, perceived, or potential financial or beneficial interest that impairs or might appear to impair the member's independence of judgment regarding a matter before this committee or in the exercise of the duties and responsibilities of this committee. So we want to avoid the appearance of impropriety or a biased opinion in what you do. And we've got that in there just as a reminder to do that, have a procedure, report that. Under Robert's rules, if there would be a question whether it is or not, it's probably best to raise it. And this committee could then make a determination under Robert's rules whether that is a legitimate conflict or not. There can be a lot of gray areas sometimes. Just what is the extent of your relationship? But again, in the interest of avoiding impropriety, transparency, it's always best to disclose those things. So I think those are the highlights of what we are proposing. And I believe Justin provided you a copy of those ahead of time so you could review them. I don't know if any of you have any questions at this time or any comments that you'd like to make.
Do we have questions or comments?
Some are curious on my part. And, so just if you could explain what the process is. There are other questions. I know I've got some, but what happens after this? In other words, which entity approves the bylaws?
Initially, you would approve them, then they would go to the commission for approval.
Okay.
Commission would have the final say on that. So you'd essentially be saying, yeah, we approve these and we recommend that the commission approve them.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions
I've got a question, but it's more general terms regarding the Open Meetings Act, which isn't directly addressed or influenced by, I think, our bylaws. So they can come up later.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, what is the question on that?
I think we might want to, are there any other questions regarding the bylaws or the change of the bylaws?
So I would suggest that we form a subcommittee of 2 to 3 people to carefully review these, do any suggested markup, present that back to the ECC full body at our next meeting, and then we can at that point discuss whether or not we want to vote on that set of recommendations. That's a suggestion. That's not a motion. The chair doesn't make motions.
I think that's fine, but I'm wondering if we want to have a conversation with all of us here or a chunk of us here, because I definitely have some things that I'm not sure are necessary or worded properly, and maybe they're in line with the other committees and commissions, but even so much as like the quorum is defined as 6 members, we may or may not have, like we might only have 7 members or 6 members at the time. So would it make more sense to say like half the total number of members plus 1? So there's things like that. There's also the no board member or other person shall speak until duly recognized by the chair. That feels like, here, take my talking stick. We don't currently have a huge problem, I don't think, of people talking over each other and arguing, and maybe it's good to have, the piece about having to stop if the chair calls order, but the rest of it almost feels hostile in the way that it's phrased. I don't think that's how it was intended. These are the things that I sort of picked out right away. I'm not sure if anyone else had things that really stood out to them in that way.
I can respond to that if you're finished. If you're not, please continue. As far as rules of procedure or stopping conflicts and so forth, this is a small body, a small committee. So as I said earlier, you don't have to follow the rules of Robert's Rules of Order specifically. You have rules there that the chair can invoke if there did become a conflict. You have, for example, in Robert's Rules, you're discussing a motion. Each person can only speak twice, and nobody can speak unless everybody else speak a second time, unless everybody else has had the chance to speak. You don't necessarily have to follow that. For example, so you can have a free exchange as long as everything is running smoothly. But you do have the rules if there did end up to be a conflict or a situation. Sometimes it happens.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, if you're not going to enforce the rule all the time, why is it in there as a rule?
I know we can. I actually have a very 180 from what you're describing. I don't have that level of angst about that. To me, and before getting into this, I agree. I think as an ECC, we need to collectively talk about that. So I've got some just general questions around there that might help us.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. I just have another comment or two, and I will say, we aren't here to shove this down your throats necessarily. If you want to have a committee look at it, come back, discuss it more, you certainly can. We have provided for subcommittees in the new bylaws. Your old bylaws didn't. I suppose in that the ordinance doesn't require subcommittees or doesn't specify for that, an argument could be made that you can't do that. We still put that in there, and I don't think that really creates a problem. I think that maybe enhances what you are to do here and what you set out to do, in that we're providing the subcommittee, yes, I think they do, presently obtain information and provide information to this committee. Now, your subcommittee is going to be less than a quorum. A quorum is required to take any action. The quorum is defined in Robert's rules as a majority. The 6 members is a majority. So if you were to have a motion, you only have 6 members present, you're going to need a majority of everybody. Everybody's going to, it's going to have to be a unanimous vote. That's how the rules work.
I do have a question. How is that defined as a majority? Unanimous
11 members.
versus majority?
Well, I guess that's what I was saying. I meant there have been times when we haven't had 11 members total. We've only had,
Yeah.
well, that's what I'm saying. So if we only have 7 members on the committee at all, then requiring 6 members to be present in order to have a quorum, to me, doesn't really seem like it makes sense. It would make sense to have 4 members to have a quorum. That's why I mentioned the, half of the current members of ECC plus 1. Well, yeah, or just a majority, but
Yeah, and I would agree, because if you have 7 people, the majority would be 4 versus 6,
It's
correct?
defined as a majority of the total membership.
right, but that's not what it says in here. In here, it specifically says 6.
Because that is a majority of the total membership.
But what
But it isn't always the total membership.
so the way this is
It's based
written,
on the total membership.
but the way this is written, we essentially cannot function as a committee unless we have a full membership. I've been on the committee for at least 3 years, and in that time, we have never once had 11 members.
11 members, it seems very large to me.
Yes.
That's my personal opinion, and I think the fact that you have had difficulty or been unable to have 11 members on this committee maybe indicates that that's too large. That can be changed, but that's going to require a change of the ordinance, which can be done, that can be initiated. And I think this
Well, does the ordinance...
could request that.
Does the ordinance require us to have 11 members at a time, or does it just say we can have up to 11 members?
It says it is to consist of 11 voting members.
So in the
We had
case...
to require it. That's my interpretation.
Well, so as in the case of our member today, they got a job in Grand Rapids, they've stepped down, we would only have 10 members. Well, for the sake of the conversation. That kind of implies that we can't exist unless we have 11 members.
No, you can still exist. It is to consist of 11 members, but you can still function with fewer. You just, in order to take action, you're going to have 6 members vote on anything.
So we would have to request, if we wanted.
Change that number.
Well, see, now then I have another set of questions, and forgive me, I'm just thinking this through.
Go right ahead.
Some of these things you're saying, well, they're more like guidelines anyway, we don't really have to follow them to the letter, but then there are other things that you're saying, like, well, we have to change the ordinance because we do have to follow it to the letter. So where is the line?
Robert's rules has some flexibility. The ordinance does not.
That answers that question, thank you.
What is the process involved in requesting an ordinance be changed?
That would basically go through Justin. We would request that change, draft a proposed ordinance, or proposed amendment to the ordinance, and then get that on the commission docket. And the council, or the commission, rather, would take action on that, either approving it or not. I am not aware that there would be, I mean, I don't know whether there would be opposition to that or not. I wasn't around here when this was put together, wasn't involved in that. I don't know why 11,
No, that's
how that
fine.
number was arrived at, I have no idea. As I say, that just seems like an awfully large number to get 11 members and keep 11 members on a consistent basis. I know with smaller boards that I deal with more regularly, like the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. On the Zoning Board of Appeals, for example, we have 6 regular members presently and 2 alternate members, and keeping all of those positions filled is difficult. Obviously, with 11 members, it's going to be more difficult, so.
No, you've answered the question, though. I mean, there is a path where if we want
Yeah.
to okay, that's very helpful to know. Thank you.
And I guess I just have one more question, like piggyback, and maybe you answered it and I'm confused, but so does that ordinance strictly apply to the ECC, or is that to all like city boards that, so would that be amending like all other boards too? Okay.
No, this ordinance specifically applies to the EEC.
Okay, thank you.
ECC. It's the ordinance that creates it, specifies what your powers and duties are.
Actually, that kind of brings up a question I had just regarding a typo. Now I can't find it in my notes, but it seems like there was a typo in there that was referring to the zoning board, and then it switched over to ECC.
It's in section 6.
Section 6.
Okay. Apologize for that, but that's certainly easy to correct.
That's an easy one.
Well, there's another misspelling, I think, when I was looking through it. Just let me know when you're ready.
It's regarding meetings. Article 6.
I will certainly scrutinize it in any final version.
Regular meetings, ZBA shall conduct regular meetings in City Hall at 4:30, which does appear to be us. Then it says on the whatever of each month, at each meeting, then it goes on to ECC.
It's just in the very first line of Article 6, it just says ZBA instead of ECC. I think that I couldn't find the word zoning in there anywhere, if anyone else has any.
It's the only place that I saw that.
I think I subsequently corrected that, but we'll certainly scrutinize it and make sure we correct all of those things.
The other thing, just so you know, that I noticed, it's in section 4.4.
Okay.
The last word on the second line, I think it's supposed to be filling. So follow the same procedure for
Yes.
filing. So just
You
wanted
are
to point
correct.
that out.
It's always a good idea, anytime you draft something, to have another set of eyes look at it. Because, as you probably know, writing things yourself, you know what you meant to say, and sometimes it looks like you actually said that when maybe you didn't.
We've got 11 sets of eyes, or at least in theory. David, did you want to talk about the open meetings and subcommittee piece too?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that. So when I look at the purpose of the ECC, it's an advisory board for the city.
Correct.
And as I recall, this goes to the state Open Meetings Act, says that advisory boards are excluded, as I recall it, are excluded from Open Meetings Act. And I don't mind, I think that that's fine for if the city wants to have this for the Open Meetings Act to apply to us. I don't see any harm in that. It's the next step down to the subcommittees. If you're going to do that, I get a little bit concerned about because it becomes kind of onerous when there's only a couple of people on a subcommittee and it's hard enough to set up appointment or set up meetings and stuff. But so does the Open Meetings Act apply to this ECC, which is identified as an advisory committee and does not have any authoritative decisions that it makes?
That takes us to the definition of public body in the Open Meetings Act.
Right.
I mean, generally, the Open Meetings Act, as I'm sure you know, deliberations of a public body constituting a quorum, again, there a quorum comes in, of its members must take place at a meeting open to the public. So what is a public body? Public body means any state or local legislative or governing body, including a board, commission, committee, subcommittee, authority, or council that is empowered by state constitution, statute, charter, ordinance, resolution, or rule to exercise governmental or proprietary authority or perform a governmental or proprietary function.
So what is it that the ECC does that fits within that? Because we don't have any authority.
Right.
So.
And the subcommittee has even less.
Right. So it doesn't even seem like the Open Meetings Act even applies to the ECC, given that reading right there.
Well, is advising a proprietary function or not? I suppose that could be argued. It's a governmental or proprietary authority. I don't think the board or this committee falls within any of the express exceptions. It's a question of whether you fall within that. I don't see a problem with following that in the interests of transparency.
Right. And that's
a subcommittee is a different matter, and we specify 2 to 3 members. It's not a, certainly not a quorum, not even close, and that is intentional. And you don't have subcommittees that large anyway. But what does the subcommittee do? Well, the subcommittee gathers information and reports it to this body in a meeting. So anything it does is discussed in one of your meetings.
But it's, and that is correct, but there's absolutely no authority attached and there's no decision-making. It is simply informational. So, and the purpose of the Open Meetings Act is to make decision-making obvious and have citizens give input, but all these subcommittees are doing is generating information. So that's why, I don't see that it could possibly apply to certainly the subcommittees. I think by the definition, and I don't care, I think that transparency is a great thing. I'd encourage it for the ECC. I don't think it hurts anything to have that. But when it gets down into the subcommittee area, I think it's imposing a burden that's technically is going to be extremely hard to.
I agree. And then essentially, Justin would need to know whenever subcommittee is meeting, would have to publish notice.
Right.
Yeah.
That's extremely burdensome, extremely expensive. Look at how many subcommittee reports we've had tonight. We're going to.
Okay, well, that
And
was
it's not
just a concern that I had. And like I said, when I started looking at that and looking at some old notes that I had, it all of a sudden occurred to me, like, probably didn't even apply to the ECC in general. But again, I don't mind the transparency portion of it. I think it's a good idea. Even if we don't have any authority, it's certainly where the decision-making process starts. Therefore, I think it's fine to have public input here. That I'm not complaining about. I just wanted to just get some clarification.
I have often said municipal governments are a repository of information, and part of the function is giving out information with certain limited exceptions in the Freedom of Information Act. Essentially, public government, municipal governments operate in a fishbowl. That is just a reality that we live with. And I'm not suggesting by saying we live with it that it's a bad thing. People need to know how their government operates and information on governmental affairs. And it would be nice if certain other governmental entities were maybe more transparent, or the trends at certain levels of government were more for transparency than away from transparency, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
I have a question. I apologize if this is redundant, but I believe I thought I heard that if we are a subcommittee and we are meeting, that meeting information needs to go to Justin. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've had a good discussion. I don't want to cut the discussion short. Do we have any other questions or comments on this?
I guess my comment would be, obviously, then there's some questions that are going on here, so that we should sit and grind through this to see if there's anything that we want to tweak, then to make a recommendation to the city or Attorney Baird to tweak it slightly differently. I don't feel comfortable just jumping in and making a decision right now.
I don't think we should. Absolutely not.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
One question. So if we were to change from 11 voting members to say 9, then that would be a maximum of 9 voting members, or can it be 10 or 11 on here? Or is that a minimum for deciding quorum?
Changing the ordinance, you can't change
No,
the bylaws to 9, but
No, if we did change them to 9, then that would be the maximum number of voting members that could sit on this board, correct?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of the things that I think we've talked about can be really simple changes, like, for instance, that instead of saying that it consists of 11, consists of up to 11. Yeah, so a lot of these changes can be, I think, could be very simple. That, of course, would take an ordinance change, but that's adding 2 words to the ordinance, I think is not going to be problematic. Do we have interest? It sounds like there might be, if there is interest in having a discussion, we can do that in a committee setting, because I think there might be some like deliberations, and it might take a bit, or we can devote a big chunk of the next month's meeting to discuss it as a whole. I think that it deserves attention in a separate meeting. It would be my sense.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, and I think that'll give us, the next month to thoroughly review, the information and not rush into any decisions or anything like that. So I think that'd be a good choice to hold off until then. So,
if people are comfortable with this process, I can suggest anyone who's interested in joining that discussion, send me an email to indicate such, And we can do it via like online, so we don't have to, it'd be much easier to set that up schedule-wise. If that sounds like an acceptable process?
I am going to make one cautionary note here. If you go with a subcommittee, that's fine. Whether the Open Meetings Act applies or not, and which question has been raised, I would encourage you not to set up a chain email that goes out to everybody with everybody responding. Because if somebody construes the Open Meetings Act to apply to this board, whether it does or not, you could end up in a lawsuit that you're violating the Open Meetings Act because you have more than a quorum deliberating on something. So that's something you have to be careful about.
Each of you email me individually. If we have more than a quorum, I will set up 2 subcommittees to discuss it. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Part of my job is to try and keep you out of trouble, so it may sound like I'm making things more difficult, but that's
That's why they pay you, is to point it out for us. Yeah.
Okay, one last call for questions while we have our guest here.
I guess just some clarification. Could you say up to 11 as opposed to consisting of 11, or does it have to be a concrete number? Because how would you, I guess the majority would establish quorum if there was only 9 people who showed up, but is that?
I think you have to specify a number.
Okay, that's
so
what
you
I
can
was thinking as well.
determine a quorum.
Okay, that's what I was, thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this point? Okay, thank you so much for the suggestions and your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to our second round of public comments. Before we ask audience, I'll just again read this number in case anybody happens to be listening and would like to call in. The number is 888-382-9556. Again, if you'd like to call in to make a public comment, it is 888-382-9556. So before we check those lines, let's see if we have people present who would like to make a comment, and I see we have at least one. Go ahead.
Good evening, Environmental Concerns Committee. My name is Iris Potter, and I live at 1204 Manor. And I am the chair, co-founder of Kalamazoo Animal Advocates. And back last month, and you didn't meet in April, we prepared a report that some of you may have seen in your email, and you might have gotten a hard copy, I don't know, a report about deer that we did for you all. So that we find it very informative. I think you will too. And if you have any questions on it, someone can get me your questions and we can answer those. But I did bring hard copies of them, so you each can take one with you, and then you don't have to muddle through emails. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Iris. Do we have any other people present who would like to make a public comment? Okay, then I would say, do we have anybody?
I will say I'm on the live stream on YouTube, and I don't see anybody in the chat on there, so.
Thank you for checking that. We usually check that in the Facebook.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I know there are burning questions that people have to ask us. And no, I can't explain why it's so cold, though I did hear it's a polar vortex, for real.
What was that last?
That this is a weather phenomenon that's making it so cold right now is actually a polar vortex.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm all for it then.
Though there's no polar vortex in this room. I don't know how you have a sweater on.
I've been cold all day. I'm finally warm.
Wow, you're definitely warm. Justin, any success?
Yes, we're in.
All right. We did our due diligence. Thank you for checking. All right, so that takes us to commissioner comments. We'll start on the other end. Steven, you want any comments?
None from me.
No comments.
I guess I have a question about what information I can provide, such as the nonprofit is doing calls for experiences related to asthma and air quality in Kalamazoo. That would be an approved thing, or is that, okay, thank you.
Yeah, my sense is as long as it's not political or a sales pitch, go for it.
Perfect, thank you. No comment other than that.
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Yes, the Institute of Public Scholarship, the 269 Air Quality Program, they have launched their website. It's 269airquality.weebly.com. You guys or anyone is able to submit an application to become a monitor, which means that using purple air monitors, you'd be able to track the air quality index within your neighborhood, privately or publicly. So there's an application on the 269airquality.weebly.com site. There's also a survey for anyone who is interested in sharing their asthma story related to air quality. There's also a Kickback and Breathe event in which we talk about data and asthma resources and personal experiences related to air quality in Kalamazoo, as well as some research, and that is happening from 5:30 to 7 p.m. The fourth Wednesday of every month. So it'll be next week, Wednesday, from 5:30 to 7. And just to add to that, is there any way to share graphs or visualizations with the ECC that they are able to?
You could email them to our ECC email. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And that website again, is that 269airquality.weebly.com, is that right?
Yes, that's right. And Weebly is WEEBLY.
Thank you. All right, no comments from me.
No comments.
The only comment that I have would be, I would like to see this commission, and I'll put forth maybe some specific information to start addressing. There's a citywide effort in regards to input, public input, in regards to the 2035 plan. I think as a governing body, I think it's important that we start addressing some of those things and maybe put forth our recommendations to the city commission as far as some of the things that we would like to see happen within the city. So I think that would be something that should be put on the agenda fairly soon.
Just to follow up on that, yes, please participate in 2035 Kalamazoo. Also, your neighborhood, if you have a neighborhood association, neighborhoods are doing neighborhood plans.
They are.
And those neighborhood plans are very important documents that can help tie into the 2035 Kalamazoo. All right.
Yep, I just want to jump in. Yep, neighborhood plans, very important. A bit of a pause there. Staff who's organizing those is no longer with us, so yes, very important. Yes, get involved, and you'll know more when we get back up to speed there.
Right, even without the city staff, though, you can originate those and begin mapping those out with your neighborhood association and your neighbors. And those are really good places to put sustainability goals, and if those get accepted, then those are things that the city can prioritize and potentially fund for your neighborhood. So those neighborhood plans are really important.
No comments, thank you.
I just have one comment. I'm on the, trying to access that website, and even the link on the Facebook page, it doesn't work. It just says 404, page not found for the air quality. Yeah, I don't know if it needs to be updated or something funky or what. But yeah, I just want to let you know. But other than that,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
We'll make sure to share that when we have the updated one. Thank you. Okay, so we are at the end. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Do I have support?
I'll second that.
Excellent. All in favor? All right, we're out of here.
You've looked through the, is there anything that's in any bylaws to have 11 people?
No, not now.